Let's look at the next one. According to police, Santosh, Devi and her son Arvind were on their way home when a canter ran over their scooter, killed both of them instantly. Where do you think the answer is? Okay, so the concept is pretty simple here, right? It's obviously a tense related concept. So when you're saying, so there are two actions happening here, right, in the context. What's the first action? What happens? One is, what's a canter? According to police, Santosh Devi and her son Arvind were on their way home when a canter ran over their scooter, killed both of them instantly. A canter can refer to any four-legged, quadrupled animal, right? It can be anything, a dog, a horse, or even a four-wheeler, right? So in this context, they're probably referring to something that ran over their scooter, right? So assuming it's some sort of a four-wheeled, right? So according to police, Santosh Devi and her son Arvind were on their way home when a canter ran over their scooter. So the first action is they were run over by their scooter. Second action is they died. And both these actions are happening to the same people, right? Our subject is Santosh Devi and the son Arvind, right? So having said that, so we'll have to also look at the context and figure out what can it be, yeah? So having said that, when two actions are happening to the same person, we can look at one of the actions in the present participle. Think of example sentence. This is something that you already know. So I can say, listening to music, I spent time finishing my, or I spent time finishing my homework or whatever. So I'm actually looking at two actions that are happening simultaneously. In that context, I can use an ing form. That's what the context is saying. So according to police, Santosh Devi and her son were on their way home when a canter ran over their scooter, killing both of them instantly. And that's why you have to change killed to killing. Because why? Both the actions, yeah, same person. Or even when you're talking about, the example that I gave is when one action is happening right after the other. And this is also done by the same person or thing. In that case, we can look at using the present participle, ing form. So on their way home, an expression as it is absolutely fine. You can add technically to be correct, according to the police, Santosh Devi and her son Arvind, yeah. So here, again, it depends on the context, right? So if I'm generalizing, right? So there are certain group of people. So in the context, what I can look at is maybe the neighbors had a different story, but the police in general had their own story, and witnesses on the road had another story. So according to police, this is the story. According to neighbors, this is the story. I can look at it like that. So when I'm generalizing something, I don't have to necessarily use the definite article, but for clarity and in terms of technical purposes, it does make sense for me to say, according to the police, this is the story. According to the neighbors, this is the story. Yeah. So yes, if you come back and ask me, I would say to make the sentence grammatically accurate, I would use the definite article in part A, which means it looks like there is more than one part that has the error, but the most obvious error is in part D, killing both of them instantly. To as a preposition is incorrect here. It is an unnecessary preposition which don't need to be there at all. Okay, anyway, the obvious error, definitely part D. You change kill to killing, and that makes the sentence grammatically right as well. For discussion purpose and argument's sake, this will make it technically right according to the police. Yeah, let's look at a couple more. The government said the crisis triggered by loss of jobs of several thousand Indians in Saudi Arabia have been resolved. Where do you think the error is? Okay, so let's look at all the parts. Most of you came back and said D. The government said the crisis triggered by loss of jobs. So that's a general context, right? Loss of jobs is the context that they're referring to. Of several thousand Indians in Saudi Arabia have been resolved. This is a classic example of a subject-verb agreement, right? What's the subject? Quickly tell me what the subject is. Is it the government? Is it the loss of jobs? Is it the crisis? What's the subject? The subject is the crisis, which is singular. The government said, the government is stating something. The subject is the crisis. The crisis was triggered by loss of jobs of several. These are all extra information, right? What has been resolved? The loss of jobs has been resolved? No, that's just one of the factors, right? It's almost like a stimuli, loss of jobs. But the subject is the crisis, which means it's a subject verb agreement, right? I just have to change have to has, right? All this prepositional phrase of several thousand Indians is extra information. Don't be confused by the prepositional phrase that comes between the primary subject and the verb. What has been resolved? The crisis has been resolved. Not the government, not the loss of jobs, not Indians. What has been resolved? Indians have been resolved? Doesn't make sense, right? So I can't say this is my subject. The crisis has been resolved. That's my primary subject. Identify the subject, you'll get where the answer is. Change has to have, error is in part D. Let's look at one last question for spot the error. Get this correct and I'll be happy. So far we've looked at subject verb agreement, we've looked at tense, we've looked at again certain phrases where we know that, singular noun number or plural noun number will follow. Here again it's to do with tense, here again it's to do with no error basically. If conditionals and noun numbers, okay. The draft report which was presented at a committee meeting could not adopt as a BJP member raised objections. As soon as you read the sentence, even if you're not understanding the context or the concept, you still know which part has the error, right? It's that easy. Something obviously sounds awkward or funny. So if I have to say they could not adopt the draft report, whoever it is in the committee meeting, right? They represent somebody at the committee meeting. So they could not adopt the draft report. Yes. So why are you changing this? Let's say this is the active voice. Yeah. So how will you change it to a passive form? The object becomes a passive subject. The draft report, complete the sentence, complete the passive form of this. Adapt and adopt. That's another confusing word pair, right? Adopt here means what? We're talking about implementation of this report, the draft report. We're not talking about to adapt to something means I can adapt to a specific, climate, weather condition, right? That's a completely different word. We are talking about something that could not be implemented, adopted. Again, one word has different meanings in different contexts. The draft report could not be adopted. That's it. And that's where the error is. Part C. Could not be adopted. Yeah, clear?